Good evening, folks. Tonight, I think I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about my experience with writing. It's kind of awkward for me to call myself a writer. No one's ever referred to me as that. I guess until very, very recently. So until very recently, I've not really dabbled much with writing. But at this point, man, I've written a book, so I guess that makes me a writer. Uh, Even back in grade school and high school, I didn't write much. I wrote what was required, and that was it. My senior year of high school, I took some sort of AP literature course, and I don't remember which one it was. It wasn't AP Lit and Comp, it was something else. Either way, I did rather well on it. But that was that. College, just normal required undergrad stuff. Um, and so, really, I've never sat down and wrote. Um, so until recently, that's kind of been the thing. So last year I was at a conference. It was rather boring. It was kind of a waste of my time, but I had to be there one way or the other. It's all paid for, is something I was expected to go to and attend, and so I did. At the time, I was working my way back through a whole bunch of Tom Clancy novels, which, if you haven't picked up on this, I rather enjoy Tom Clancy. I enjoy novels similar. I enjoy stuff like Dale Brown, uh, a whole bunch of other folks, Stephen Koontz. He's great. I like the techno thriller, the military thriller sort of novel. Anyhow, I was reading through a bunch of these and I was having a blast. And, I figured, can't be that hard. Can't be that hard, can it? So I got my laptop out and started to write, and before you knew it, I had a couple chapters down and I had the bug. So I've had a finished manuscript since June of 25. And at this point, I'm finding out that publishing is the hardest, darndest struggle in this whole process. So it's really just coming down to money. We'll get there. Early this next year, I plan to get the final bit of editing done, and we'll get it formatted. We'll see if I can afford artwork, good cover art. Otherwise, I'll format it myself, and we'll get her published. So that's been the real struggle, the real education. I feel like is how in the world do you publish a book? How do you? I'll find out. That's for sure. But as I am finding out, it is a process and not entirely cheap. So, uh, very educational. Let's just say that. Anyhow, my actual writing process is very much a catch as catch can sort of deal. At this point, I've not been doing a ton of actual like book writing recently. I'm about a fifth of the way through book two, so there's another one coming. I could probably knock it out in a couple months once I've kind of got the rest of this stuff off my plate and a clear mind. Um, I write on my lunch hour. I'll write real early in the morning if I've got something on my mind. I'll write in the evening. Uh, Usually cannot write right as soon as I get home. I usually have to wait until later in the evening, like right now. uh, I wish I could write outside. That probably wouldn't be a bad idea. It is rather peaceful out here right now. I live out in the country. I'd show you where I write, but it's an absolute mess, and I'm not going to let you see that. My house is half built. It's under construction. It's been under construction. My wife has been very, very gracious and has been very understanding. She's the most patient woman I know. And our house is getting there. We're trying to do build a house affordably, which is quite the difficult proposition in today's economy. But we're getting there. So right now it's just an unfinished room. It's got a window, framed walls, no drywall, concrete floor. Got my desk, my computer. It's kind of a storage area, so everything that we don't know where else to put ends up in there. I've got enough room to get to my desk and sit on my chair, and I do what I can. Dogs are howling over there. Anyhow, as far as writing goes, I don't do very much editing while I'm writing. I found very early on I had to have a character list. After the first 4 or 5 thousand words, I would start to forget who was who, and not so much who was who, but like whose name was who. Especially when you're dealing with a lot of like Russian names and stuff like that. Remembering how to spell them can get a little tedious, and so I didn't look this up or anything. I just wrote a character page, and what do you know? That's kind of what you need to have handy to handy a reference. I find I spend not quite as much, but almost as much time researching systems and equipment and tactics and language, almost as much as I do just writing. Might find that interesting. I've got a long background in reading about military technology and tactics, history and strategy, all those things. I'm still purely amateur on it. I'm not a professional historian. I am not an amateur historian. I think I could categorize myself as um, a bit of a military history nut. uh, I enjoy it. I'm a connoisseur, but I am by no means a historian. Um, so I'm doing my best. I'm not an expert in any of these fields, but I do have a pretty decent knowledge base, and I try to exploit that as best I can. But at the same time, I still go and I do the research, make sure I'm presenting something as accurate as I can without having ever been in the Navy on a ship. I've hardly even been out in the water, to be honest, but I'm doing my best because it's something that fascinates me. There's all sorts of books about submarines. There's all sorts of books about aircraft. There's, of course, books about the Navy SEALs. I mean, every single Navy SEAL has a book practically. Um, but there's not a whole lot about surface combat because really there's not a lot of surface naval combat that's occurred. There really isn't. Since World War II, there just hasn't been very much. And so when I'm writing it, I kind of feel like I'm in a bit of a niche of all of my own. Uh, I was reading some books recently by P.T. Duderman, great author, and he does a lot of World War II warfare, some of that surface warfare. Um, so I really enjoyed it. I absolutely tore through um, that one book. It was oh, what was it called? I'll put it up here right about now. I can't remember the name right off the top of my head. The Commodore, I believe, by P.T. Duderman. But that said, though, there's not a lot about Cold War surface combat. I might eventually delve also into like older Cold Wars, like 50s, 60s, and very early 70s, not like the later Clancy era Cold War, tail end of the Cold War. So that said, my writing process is very much just catch as catch can. Uh, get a 500 words in, get 1,000 words in, I get 1,500 words some days. I've probably gotten 3 or 4 in a day on a really good day. Just everything's clicking. Uh, Dialogue is not my strong spot, but you got to do it. There's all sorts of things in romance. I don't read romance. I don't enjoy romance novels. Guess what? There's no romance. I didn't even try. Didn't even try. One of my really only big critiques of Tom Clancy, for example, is his romances are not that great. They really aren't. He has no business doing it. So why even try? He did it, I think that's one of the weakest spots of his last, well, okay, not his last book, but one of the last ones he wrote all by himself, The Bear and the Dragon. Did not need to be there, not in the way he wrote it, that's for sure. And it's mostly just laughable. So a man's got to know his limitations, and I know what my limitations are. And I'm doing my best to stay within those bounds. So anyhow, if you got any specific questions about my writing, I use Google Docs. That's I use Google Docs. Nothing crazy, no Scrivener, no nothing like that. You just have to sit down. You have to write, organize it as best you can. Um, but you have to write. You have to put words on the paper. You can't have a book unless you have enough words. So uh, I'm at about 110, 111,000 words. So my final product, when I bring a letter of marque to you in 2026, that should be somewhere in the mid 300 page range, and I'm sure I'll get more feedback as we go along. I've got a fairly close to finished product at the moment, and I'm very proud of it. And I'm hoping that you will enjoy it when you have the opportunity to. So, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. Send me an email. I'll be more than happy to try to answer it as best I can. So, that's all for today. Maybe I'll come back and give you a few more musings and thoughts on writing. So, have a good evening.